Everyone stared as the billionaire's deaf son collapsed into tears, shaking in the center of the room. People whispered about weakness and shame. Then a quiet young black girl stepped forward, touched his trembling hands, and revealed a truth that froze the entire world in place. The crying started before anyone noticed the boy was alone, in a room built of glass and power, surrounded by wealth so loud it felt heavy in the air. The billionaire's son stood trembling, his small hands pressed hard against his ears, not because of noise, but because the silence inside him had become unbearable. Tears rolled down his cheeks in slow, helpless lines. His body shook as if something inside him was breaking open. People stopped. Some stared. Others turned away. No one understood why the deaf boy was crying. They assumed fear or weakness, or a tantrum from a child who had never known hardship. His father stood a few steps away, frozen. He had bought the best doctors, the best teachers, the best devices. He had built empires from nothing. Yet in this moment, surrounded by influence and respect, he was powerless. The boy's pain had no sound, but it filled the room. And then, from the edge of the crowd, a girl stepped forward. She was small. Her clothes were simple. Her skin was deep and warm, like the earth after rain. No one noticed her at first, because people like her were often invisible in rooms like this. But she saw the boy, not his tears, not his name, not his father. She saw the truth. Her name was Amara. She did not rush. She did not speak. She walked slowly, calmly, as if the world had taught her patience through pain. Her eyes held something old, something earned. The guards shifted. The room stiffened. A silent question spread. Who is she? But Amara did not look at the men with power. She looked only at the boy who was drowning in silence. When she reached him, she did not touch him right away. She knelt at his level. And for the first time since the crying began, the boy lifted his eyes. His tears slowed, because for the first time that day, someone was not trying to fix him. Someone was trying to understand him. Amara's story did not begin in that room. It began years earlier, in a small apartment where the walls were thin and the nights were long. She had grown up with a mother who worked until her hands cracked and bled, and a father who never came home from a job he took to keep food on the table. The loss came early to Amara, like a shadow that never left her side. She learned silence young, not the silence of peace, but the silence of survival. At school, she was the girl teachers worried about but never truly saw. The girl who flinched at raised voices. The girl who listened more than she spoke. Her younger brother was born deaf. Doctors spoke fast words and made sad faces. They told her mother it would be hard. They told her what he might never do. Amara did not listen to that part. Instead, she learned his world. She learned how hands could speak, how eyes could hear, how touch could say what voices never could. At night, she would sit with her brother, feeling the vibration of his laughter through the floor, holding his hands as they invented games with gestures and smiles. She learned that silence was not empty. It was full of meaning. When her brother was taken from her by illness years later, the world went quiet in a way she could not explain. Not empty, heavy, like air before a storm. She carried that silence with her everywhere. It shaped how she walked, how she looked at people, how she listened to what was never said. Years later, that silence led her into places she never expected. She volunteered at community centers. She helped children who felt unseen. She became fluent in the language of hands and expressions. But more than that, she became fluent in pain. So when she saw the billionaire's son crying, she knew immediately. This was not fear. This was grief. The room around them buzzed with discomfort. Advisors whispered to each other. Guests avoided eye contact. A few people shifted, annoyed by the delay. The boy's father felt every stare like a judgment. He had built his life on control, on solutions, on results. But there was no solution. Here, the boy's tears fell harder now, his breath uneven. His body leaned inward, folding in on itself as if trying to disappear. Amara gently raised her, hands slow, clear, respectful. She signed. The boy froze, His hands trembled as they lifted to meet hers. Their fingers moved together. Not fast, not polished, but honest. His breathing changed. The room did not understand what was happening, but something was changing. The boy's tears did not stop, but they softened. Because Amara was not asking him to be strong. She was asking him to be heard. Inside, the boy's memories collided. The crowded room, the expectations, the constant pressure to be normal, to smile, to perform gratitude for a life he never chose. People loved him loudly but listened poorly. They spoke around him, about him, for him, never with him. Amara's hands told him something no one else had. You are not broken. You are overwhelmed. The truth spilled out through his hands in desperate movements. The words came uneven, heavy with emotion. He had seen a man earlier that day, a worker, a cleaner, someone who looked like Amara's brother would have looked as an adult. The man had been escorted out for standing, where he was not supposed to stand. Security had been rough. Too rough. The boy had seen the man's fear, his helplessness. It had unlocked a memory he carried deep inside, of hospitals, of his own helplessness, of his mother crying silently at night when she thought he could not see. He had tried to tell his father, but no one was watching his hands, so the grief stayed inside. Until now, Amara's eyes filled. She nodded. She let him finish. Then she signed back, slower, steadier. Your heart is reacting because you remember pain. That means your heart is alive. The boy straightened. Across the room, the billionaire felt something crack inside his chest. He had spent years believing love meant protection through wealth, through distance from harm. But his son had been harmed anyway. By being unseen, Amara finally stood and turned to the room. She did not raise her voice. She did not accuse. She simply translated. She explained what the boy felt, what he saw, what broke open inside him. The room went still. No one moved. No one interrupted. The truth had weight. It settled on every shoulder in that room. The worker was quietly brought back in. His hands shook. His eyes were wide. The boy looked at him and signed a simple message. I saw you. I am sorry. The worker placed a hand over his heart. Amara stepped back. Her role complete, but the moment was not over. The billionaire walked forward, slower than anyone had ever seen him move. He knelt in front of his son. Not as a powerful man, but as a father. He took his son's hands and waited. He did not rush. He did not speak. He listened. Later, people would talk about that day. They would talk about how silence had spoken louder than wealth, how a girl no one noticed became the most important voice in the room. They would repeat words that spread across social media and into hearts. Silence is not emptiness. It is a language waiting for respect. Power is not volume. It is understanding, and the strongest people are often the quietest ones in the room. The boy stopped. He was crying, not because the pain vanished, but because it was finally shared. The crowd slowly stood, not prompted, not instructed, just moved by something deeper than habit, respect. The billionaire publicly apologized, not with excuses. With humility, he pledged change, not as an image, as a responsibility, and Amara walked away the same way. She arrived quietly, unseen by many, but never forgotten, because some heroes do not arrive with noise. They arrive with truth, and they leave the world softer than they found it. If this story moved you, share where you are watching from and what moments stayed with you the most. Subscribe for more stories that honor silent strength, unseen battles, and the quiet power of empathy.